with Interfaith Paths to Peace and also with the beloved community. I want to welcome you to our conversation today. This is a series on how we as a community can support our youth and young adults. That the beloved community, which is a gathering of concerned citizens to create a more racially just city. We are taking each month the different area that we feel is really essential for creating a racially just city. And we are focusing on it and harvesting the incredible wisdom and insights and energy of individuals and organizations that are doing great work in our community. So I invite you to come back. This will be the next 3 Wednesdays at 12 o'clock. We'll be, at 3 o'clock on Thursdays. We are hosting these conversations. The next week will be a panel of stakeholders that are working in this space, organizational stakeholders. And so they'll be sharing some wisdom about what else is happening in Louisville and practical ways that you can get involved in supporting youth and young adults. And then we'll also have a panel of young adults that fit into this opportunity youth category, which you're going to hear more about today on the third Thursday. And then all of our forums really hit a crescendo with what we call our Reckoning Forum. Each month we host a Reckoning Forum where we highlight social innovators working in this space. And we're going to be interviewing 4 really talented social innovators working in the space of youth and young adults. So we hope you'll come back and support them with your time and energy and resources as well. They're doing some amazing things and can use the support of our community. So that's the conversation. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Those of you who are joining us on Facebook, you're welcome to put your comments in the Facebook part on the Facebook page, and we'll bring those in as well. I want to turn it over to Nikki Thornton. Nikki is a co-host of our beloved community group, and she is also with True Up and has a great deal of expertise in this area. The way the beloved community is organized, we have what we call constellation hosts, and she is helping to host the young adult constellation. So Nikki, thanks for all the work you're doing in this space, and I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Judd. I'm so happy to see everyone here today. It is amazing how when you're doing a presentation or excited about a big project and you see friendly faces on the screen, it is so helpful. So I want to thank my colleagues for finding time today that was probably difficult to do, to find an hour for being on the call today. I really appreciate you all being here and everyone being here and showing the support. I do work with True Up. We work with young people that have a foster care experience and other vulnerable young people in our community. And I'm now the executive director for True Up. And so I'm excited about that new role. And I'm excited to continue this work around youth and young adults with all of you all in our community. I'm super excited for Darryl Young Jr. to be with us today. Darryl has accepted a new role in his life as well, and he's very busy. But again, he found time to be here and share some really important information with us today. I'm here to learn as well. Though I do this work, there's always ways to learn. And so I'm excited to introduce Darryl to everyone. And then I'm going to speak a little bit about the Coalition Supporting Young Adults. We have other members on the call who have been part of what we call CSYA for many years. And I'm hopeful that they're going to be able to share some of their wisdom as well. So Darryl Young Jr. currently serves as the Executive Director of the Coalition Supporting Young Adults, where he is tasked with supporting Louisville's Opportunity youth, young people 16 to 24 who are not connected to school, work, or services. He is an active member of the Louisville community as a concerned citizen, advocate, and community organizer. Darryl is heavily involved in the Cities United initiative and the National Black Male Achievement Movement, working closely with the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Mr. Young is a past president and co-founder of the Associate Board of Directors of the Nativity Academy of St. Boniface, former co-chair of the One Love Louisville initiative, and a senior consultant with the Racial Healing Project. He's a former member of the grassroots community organization, Network Center for Community Change. Darryl is also an active member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated and is the immediate past president of the Epsilon Beta Sigma Louisville Alumni Chapter. Darryl is a 2020 Louisville Business First 40 Under 40 honoree, Kentucky Colonel, the highest civil honor a Kentucky resident can receive, and proud alum of the University of Louisville, class of 2012, where he received a bachelor's degree in secondary education. So we're really honored to have Darryl today. And Darryl, I hope I spoke correctly for the Nativity Academy of Saint
Boniface.
Boniface. Thank you.
Perfect, Nikki. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I just want to say just a little bit about the Coalition Supporting Young Adults. I've been a member since 2014. I'm really proud of the work that what we call CSYA does in our community. We come together as volunteers for many years to advocate and uplift our young people's voices and to collaborate with other organizations and community members around our young people's needs. So I'm really proud of my affiliation with CSYA, and I'm currently the interim board chair. So I'm happy to serve in that role. A little bit of history. In February 2011, Chef Nancy Russman's concerns that very few services for struggling young adults in our community was the catalyst for a convening of a wide variety of service providers to determine whether there was sufficient interest in looking deeper into and responding to this situation. That initial convocation launched an effort that is still growing today. Building on that initial interest and support, a second community meeting was held a few months later, and it was determined that the mission of the effort would be to bring the community together to focus on young adults 16 to 24 who are in crisis without support. And so the Coalition Supporting Young Adults was launched. Essential to its development and ongoing momentum is the Coalition for the Homeless, which provided administrative support and visionary leadership. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what CSYA does in our community, why it was formed, and Darryl is going to help us understand better our young people who need some extra help at times. And so Darryl, we'll turn it over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I think you mentioned that it's always really good when you can see familiar faces out, even in a virtual setting, to make you a little more comfortable. And I'm glad that you did mention, because you are so humble, Nikki, that you are our current board chair for CSYA, and we are thankful for your leadership. And Nikki's talked about me filling you in about CSYA and Opportunity Youth, but when we have titans like Nikki on the call, I almost feel like you guys are getting shortchanged by not having her wisdom and knowledge being shared today, but hopefully she will speak more of that. Also, I noticed that Elizabeth Sanalvi is also on here, another titan of the work who's really helped CSYA move forward, and it's beginning to now where we're at now. So hopefully I can do this conversation justice. But want to thank Interfaith Pathways to Peace for prioritizing this conversation around Opportunity Youth. We understand at CSYA, the Coalition Supporting Young Adults, how important it is to have this conversation. And so we're just happy to have any platform to discuss the needs and issues affecting young people in our city. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully this will be smooth, because things can never be smooth on Zoom. But we're going to see how well this can go. Oh, look at that. That didn't take us too long to get going. So again, we want to talk about supporting Louisville's Opportunity Youth and the way we're doing it here at CSYA. Nikki already gave you who I am and what the coalition has been doing, or the background history. And so we're going to just get right into the topic of what is the coalition supporting young adults, and who are our Opportunity Youth. And the way we define Opportunity Youth through CSYA are young adults aged 16 to 24 who are not connected to school, work, or services, and then often also compounded with that issue are facing a lived experience that is creating barriers to success. And we talk about those barriers to success. We're talking about are issues such as unstable housing or homelessness or transient youth. I think which is a really huge issue that a lot of folks don't talk about. We talk about homelessness, involvement in the child welfare system, conflict or any kind of run-ins with the law, students who are suspended and spend a lot of time outside of school, early pregnancy or parenting, leaving school before graduation, dealing with emotional or physical special needs or disabilities, including addiction. And then lastly, which we know has been a long time problem in our country, is finally seeming to come to a reckoning point now, is discrimination or harassment due to race or gender identity, or low income or persistent economic stress. So that is our definition of what we term as opportunity youth. And so when we talk about that, when we talk about our city and what our community looks like in terms of this issue, we know that coming from a 2019 report done by the Courier Journal, that about 1 in 10 youth in Louisville fall under this category of opportunity youth. If you equate that out, that's 16,800 young people. And if you look at that by race, 1 in 4 happen to be Black. Which is about 12% of Louisville's youth, which is one of the highest percentages in the entire country. And when you break that down, just look at the cost, if you were to try to look at that over a lifetime, over those young people's lifetimes, that could be a potential drag on the city. We talk about the loss of tax revenue from them having a job and generating tax dollars, as well as their need for social welfare programs. A loss of over $15 billion for our local economy. And then, of course, we know that all these issues are compounded by the pandemic. And so a recent study showed that on a national scale, the amount of opportunity youth, or how it's also described as disconnected youth, has doubled. So you can only imagine the trends we're seeing now because of COVID. So that's the reality of what's going on here. We talk about opportunity youth, the issues they're facing, and the reality they have here in our city and also nationally. So what's being done right now and how are we stepping in? So we talk about the coalition. You heard the history that Nikki spoke to, and I'd also encourage Nikki or Elizabeth, if they want to jump in here as well to kind of talk about this. But I think one of the biggest things at the forefront to me, when we talk about coalition in our first, part of our name being coalition, is that we're encouraging collaboration. If you have done work in this city, you have known that the term silo has been in heavy use for a number of years. This idea of this non-partnership, this non-collaboration, everybody competing. There's been this kind of sense that there's only enough of the pie to go around, only so much, so my program has to get it first. And we understand as a coalition that this work is so nuanced, it is so vast, that we can't do this. No one person can do this work alone. So we are constantly trying to partner and show the benefit of partnering to the organizations doing the work here in Louisville. There are a number of youth serving organizations doing great work, and we understand the power that it looks like when they work together. When we talk about the coalition, we're talking about a group of over 90 named partners and individuals, organizations who have signed up to be a part of the coalition. And then another about 77 or so who receive our updates or on our mailing list. And we are seeking to expand that every single day. Some of the work also that CSYA has done, you can find us all on our website, has been to do youth voice projects. You will hear me constantly talking about the need to center youth voice. We talk about advocating for young people. It is one of my, to me, one of my proudest roles and responsibilities is to be an advocate for young people. But I always lean back on the words of Anthony Smith, who is the CEO of Cities United, and saying that young people are their own greatest advocate. They don't need adults to twist their words and to present them for them. So how do we really let youth tell their stories authentically? And how do we also do that in a way that's not damaging and dehumanizing, right? So I feel like oftentimes the only time we allow youth to speak is to tell a really harrowing story, a really tragic story, to show how much we've helped them from that moment, right? So we're constantly asking youth and young people to constantly relive these traumatizing moments. And that's the only time we really give them credence or listening. But CSY has done a great job of hosting multiple sessions and projects where we allow youth to tell us what they need, what they're experiencing, what's working and what's not working, right? Also producing the Opportunity Youth Needs Assessment and Evaluation 2017. You will see parts of that report in this presentation. Also producing a mini documentary, about a 7.5-minute documentary from Ant on Opportunity Youth. And then also doing a community mapping project. I've already talked about there are so many wonderful organizations doing great work in the city of Louisville, but also making sure that young people understand that too, right? I was just actually having this conversation earlier that it can feel like the nonprofit sector, the social justice sector in Louisville is very tight knit, and we all know each other, and we all see each other at the same events and conferences and convenings and gatherings. But that same kind of camaraderie and network, I don't think is known to the greater public, right? The folks who aren't living and breathing this like we do. We know this is a 9 to 5, right? This is a 24/7 for us, and we don't really take breaks from this work because it doesn't stop. But other people aren't as plugged in as that, so it's really important that we get the word out and make this landscape navigatable for a young person who is trying to receive resources. And so that's some of the work that CSYA has done, and that's just a really, really short list, right? I don't think Judd gave me enough time to talk about all the great things that CSYA has done in the past, but that's just a short list. And so something we're doing now is that we're actually becoming a standalone nonprofit. We are in the process, crossing the last T's and dotting the last I's on our IRS application as we speak. So that we can actually become an actual organization. Nikki spoke to the coalition's longstanding history of being a collaborative initiative, but now actually conceptualizing that into an actual organization. It's like hiring staff, like me. I also saw our brand new network coordinator, Brittany Brown, who's on the call. So excited and honored to have her doing this work with us. Hiring the youth engagement coordinator who will be coming on here in the next week. And then also I see some of our partners on the call with us, and really through grant dollars from organizations like Metro Louisville through the Office for Youth Development, the Junior League of Louisville, and the Jewish Heritage Foundation for Excellence allowed us to do some really needed work in our community, to do some really exciting programs and projects that are really going to help us understand what's going on in our city. It also looks like creating a partnership with the Louisville Urban League, the Office for Youth Development, Youth Build Louisville, and Goodwill, Kentucky, to create the Louisville Youth Network, right? To figure out a way to centralize services and really help make sure that young people have the best chance and possibility to navigate what they need and what they need to get from the city. Again, you will see me talking about centering youth voice. And all of our work, we have added 3 young people to our board of directors. We have included young people in all of our studies for our reports and our analysis and our data collection. Advocating for the things that young people need is a tenet that CSYA has done and will continue to do. And then again, supporting organizations who are working with Opportunity Youth. And then some of those projects that we are currently in the midst of, providing trainings to partner organizations, citywide youth targeted marketing and outreach plan, completing a new fiscal and resource map, conducting a cross-system trends assessment, and participant-led mental health research. And so that's what we're doing and in the process of doing. But I really wanted to bring it back to this idea of what are young people actually saying? I know I've been in too many rooms where adults are formulating their ideas and opinions of what young people need, what they should be doing, and what have you. And there's no young people in the room, right? So these are pulled from our 2017 assessment. We will be doing a new assessment, producing that shortly, but just pulling at some of the things that we heard and we learned from that last assessment. So youth want opportunities to connect with mentors, connect with people who they see themselves as. They can be positive role models, access to effective treatment for addiction, depression, loss, trauma, and anxiety. Learn practical skills such as how to manage money. I was in a meeting last week with a group of young people. It wasn't necessarily an organization, just some caring adults who had a connection to a group of young people, and we're bringing them to a space, feeding them, and just asking them questions and trying to offer support. And a consistent theme that came up throughout that night was that a lot of our young people don't feel prepared to be adults. They don't know how to purchase a home. They don't know how to sign a lease for an apartment. They don't know how to go to the bank and open up a bank account. They don't know how to balance a budget. They don't know these basic needs that are compounding and complicating their lives right now, which is leading to stress and anxiety. Finding jobs that pay livable wages. If you were to see the report that I referenced earlier, that talks about opportunity youth in Louisville, one of our young people, person in the program, talked about her experiences in trying to find a job that actually paid a living wage and being put in jobs that didn't actually pay her, but tried to do some really underhanded things during her employment. So we have to have actual jobs that actually pay young people a sustainable, livable wage that are consistent and provide adequate hours and are accessible. We understand the challenges around transportation for anybody, youth or other, when it comes to navigating our city, and places that can take a 20-minute ride can be almost in a car can be almost a 2, 3, or even 4-hour journey on the TARP. Getting help with schoolwork, and then just having a positive network of people who really have your back. And then wanted to lift up what youth are looking for in the programs that we offer, because if your program, if it's, could have the highest rating and metrics and what have you, but if youth don't feel comfortable and don't find it accessible, it's not going to work. So youth want programs that are flexible, that can meet their complex needs. We understand that our youth lead really interesting lives at times where a traditional 9 to 5 does not work for them. They need different hours that make sense for them. They want to be around caring adults that they feel are qualified and who are concerned about them. That reminds me of a really interesting story. So part of my work before CSYA was to work with recently adjudicated youth 13 to 18 through the Right Turn program, which is now Reimage for folks who are familiar with the Reimage program. But I remember connecting a young person to a mentor, and this was an older person who typically were wary of making those connections, not because we were ageist, but we realized that what we saw from a lot of our older volunteers was they had this really kind of authoritarian idea of the relationship they were going to have with their young person. And I remember that young person had a real issue of being late to school and oversleeping. And so I was talking to that mentor, and I was telling them, giving them some background after working with the case manager for that young person, and trying to set up a plan of action for that volunteer to take. And when I told them about the sleeping, they said, well, I'm going to buy them an alarm clock. That's going to completely alleviate the excuses for that young person. So once I get them this alarm clock, they're automatically going to be on time and be able to go to school, and there will be no more issue. And so I checked in with them about a month later, and they were irate that the young person was not on time to school still, and they could just not believe why they were still late. And I said, well, have you actually talked to the young person about the issue? And they said, well, I told them that they needed to be to school on time. I said, but you actually stopped and talked to them and listened to what was going on. And so when they did that and they came back to me, we came to find out that that young person had just lost their best friend to gun violence, and had been extremely depressed and was coping through sleep. And so oftentimes we as adults, we see issues with young people, and we think there are automatic fixes without understanding the nuance and taking the time to really hear young people and what they need. And I'm going to reference that again later, but that's so critical to the work that we're doing, is actually centering the experience, the voices and the needs and wants of young people. Easy to find, promote effective programs and resources in multiple ways and times. This is really part of the work of the Louisville Youth Network. Part of that work, working with our partners, is to create network navigators as well as peer support specialists, so that young people don't feel like they're by themselves trying to find these resources, trying to navigate all different organizations and initiatives and companies. But I think even for us, it can be kind of hard to navigate that. And when we hear a new acronym or a new organization or a new funding stream that has a new title and name for it, it can be all kind of hard for us as professionals who have been doing the work for so long to keep it all together. So we should be able to understand how difficult that can be for a young person trying to navigate it. And that's a big aim for the Louisville Youth Network, to try to make that, to demystify that process and make it a lot more straightforward and simpler. Led by youth, creating meaningful ways for young people to get involved in the projects that impact them. You heard earlier, one of the things I'm most proud of CSYA doing is adding 3 young people, 24 years and younger, to our board of directors, giving them actual input and voice, right? So not just using them as mascots for the organization, not just trying them out there for a photo opportunity, but really giving them real say in our work. And I will say that not only are they board members, but they've also been invited to participate in our fiscal and resource mapping project as well. So we're not only just putting them in a position on paper, but we're actually giving them real-time, real-life experience to help shape this work and make sure that it has authentic youth voice. And speaking of authentic voice, I think I'm starting to lose mine. So when we talk to young people, excuse me, the top 5 needs identified by young people were transportation, housing, planning for the future, financial resources, and getting and keeping a job. And then we asked them top 5 hardest resources to access. It was housing, transportation, college training programs, financial resources, and food. So what can you do to help? What does that look like? Now that you know the population, understand the work being done, and the issues and challenges that young people face, we would love for you to join the coalition. You will see a link in this presentation. You can write that down and visit the website, www.csyalouisville.org. You can sign up to receive our newsletter. You can sign up as an individual or an organization to be a part of the coalition. We have all kinds of work that we would love to plug you into. I would say that I think each and every one of us has to adopt the no bad youth philosophy, because I feel like too often times when we went back at the very beginning of my presentation, we talked about the barriers and the issues that young people face. I think too often times we label those as excuses. Well, these are young people who just don't want to work hard or try hard. And I know seeing some case managers on this call right now who have done this work with this population, they could tell you that these young people are some of the most hardworking individuals that you could ever meet, who are having to juggle and navigate lives that most of us couldn't even dream of having to do, right? And we really have to look at this. How can we, reduce these barriers? We can't have this bootstrap theory, right? Of you just need to do better and work harder. It's not a lack of effort. It is a system that is not adapted to work for these young people. What can we do to make a difference and start to dismantle those issues and those barriers? Be ready to shift. Because I know a lot of this, when we talk about centering youth voice, putting youth in leadership positions, that is not the status quo. That is not how things work, right? We have been doing things for a long time. I think, we can do this work, and we go to things like this, and somebody says something like, center youth voice, and we say, oh, that was really great. And somebody asks us, how's the presentation? Oh, this guy, Darryl Young Jr., he spoke of centering youth voice, and it was really good. And it was heartwarming. It was passionate. Hopefully it's passionate. Hopefully this is a passionate, feeling conversation that you are experiencing right now. Hopefully nobody is bored yet. But then we go back to our offices and we don't do anything with it because it would require us to reset the hierarchy, right? For a lot of us, we participate in hierarchical systems of us on top as the service provider and youth on the bottom as though we're rendering services too. And it can be a really dehumanizing dichotomy that we create. And this is, I think, a dichotomy that we have that's problematic in really a lot of philanthropy, service providing programs in general. We'll talk about who we're serving, who we're working for. If we're talking about serving somebody, that should mean that the population that we're working with are the ones that we're centering. But too oftentimes we see them as a problem. We see them as the less than that need our great wisdom and life-giving services. And it just creates a lot of problematic relationships and dynamics in the work that we do. And we perpetuate those same issues that we talked about earlier that we say we're trying to disrupt and dismantle. Again, collaborate with us. We know that this work cannot remain in silos if Louisville is to move forward and do this work. We can't. One organization cannot do it alone. Again, CSYA, I told somebody earlier this week that I view CSYA as a bulldozer and a matchmaker. We want to bulldoze these silos, but also at the same time, we want to, play match.com for any organization so that they can work together collaboratively, right? You might be working on a project and you might not have case management services, but we know somebody who does. You might not be able to provide mental health services. We know somebody who does as part of the network. And we really want to make sure we are providing that resource and that access to one another so that we can stop working in silos and really start working collaboratively to move the work forward. And then lastly, again, I'm always going to say center youth voice and really give the young people real legitimate access to decision-making and power. And so I think we moved into the question time of a presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thanks, Darryl. I had a couple of questions that came up for me. If you don't mind, I'm going to jump in.
Go ahead.
One, thanks for just the information. I think that study specifically on what the needs were is interesting. One of the things I was wondering, are there really you mentioned maybe one or so, but creative ways in which people are centering youth voices? Are there some other examples of that we can think creatively about that people have done?
I think there
or
are
maybe
a lot of
other people on the call may know of some creative ways. I don't know.
So some of the things that we're seeing now is the Louisville Story Project has been doing projects with young people that are really, really cool and profound. I know the Youth Action Board at the Coalition for the Homeless is creating a podcast for their young people to participate in. I know the Louisville Urban League last year did a story project where they gave their youth program participants disposable cameras, and they asked them just to photograph their lives and the things they saw, do some really cool and inventive storytelling. Again, we could definitely go into ideas on how do we actually center youth voice. And again, I'm really big on bringing youth to the table. So allowing you to be part of your boards. CSYA is doing that right now with 3 young people under the age of 24 on our board, or 24 and under, because I think Kiki is actually 24, maybe 25 now. But those are just a few things. So, really just trying to make sure that we are providing youth space to listen, to be listened to. And actually, again, I mentioned actually have an authentic conversation, and not just conversation centered around their deficits or their most tragic moments or traumatic moments of their lives.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? You can just unmute yourself and jump in, or comments. A lot of wisdom on the call.
I would add with the youth voice piece too, an opportunity where they can advocate across Kentucky, especially with things being virtual. There were some opportunities I was able to connect some young people to around race relations, just around their lived experiences. So some ways to train and then prepare our young people for those advocacy opportunities to reach larger amounts of people. And then even with the training piece, which I think is really important, that we train each other and our young people, there's some training opportunities that are typically spaces that are only for staff. And so one example I'll give is around, it's called Love Notes, and it's a healthy relationship training. And several staff had a chance in our community to get trained and then provide that training to young people about healthy relationships. So there's a training that's occurring this weekend, and we actually have a young adult who's going to get trained to be a trainer. So it's a new space. I think certainly for me and for maybe some other staff, is that in these typical spaces of older adults, that we're now inviting young people in and equipping them, just like we'll have on our resumes and in our conversations. This young person will be a trainer for Love Notes and can go out and train other young people. So that was an opportunity that was offered to some other young people as well. So before this weekend, maybe we'll get another 1 or 2 young people who can be part of that training.
A few other things I think of when we talk about what are creative ways that people are centering youth voice, and just some programs that I know are doing a great job of that, is YVPRC, Youth Violence Prevention Resource Committee. They're doing some amazing work in West Louisville, really talking about racism as a public health issue. And they're training their folks to really examine that and speak to it from that perspective. I know Metro Youth Advocates does training to help young people feel comfortable advocating for youth policy in government spaces like Metro Council, like the State Assembly, going down to Frankfurt and advocating. And then they also do a yearly TEDx style presentation once a year, where they allow you to give TEDx style or TED Talk style presentations.
Are there other questions or comments? I had another question. Are there many religious groups, like youth groups, that are part of the coalition? Seems like that's a good resource, but I don't know if there's been a effort to connect youth groups, like in religious churches or things like that. Yeah.
No, I think that's a need that we have seen that we want to do a better job in, because we know that houses of worship do often have the capacity to have youth networks and youth groups and youth ministry. And that could be a really great source of outreach for us to have those in our network. I'm not sure how evolved that is, but that is something that we identified, Judd, that we really want to work on as we continue to grow out the network.
Yeah, let's. I'll go online right now and say let Interfaith Pass the Peace wants to join you in that. So we'll figure out how we can connect our religious youth groups to your work. So thank you.
I have a question. Are you all connected or have any type of affiliation with residential facilities as far as their youth transitioning out of their care?
I can maybe speak to that, and some other people on the call probably could as well. But the work that I do is very specific to foster youth, and certainly other vulnerable young people in our community too. But it's really got a lens toward foster care, and so I'm connected to those groups in our community, those private child care agencies, and supporting organizations like I see someone here today that support our foster youth as well. So that's one way that CSYA is able to work with young people that have a foster care experience. There's others. We have a board member, a new board member. She's a member, or she's a staff at Boys and Girls Haven, as an example. But that net has, I feel like, been cast pretty, pretty far within CSYA, really from the beginning when I started in 2014. Conversations were around foster youth and putting supports around, our young people aging out. So I'm not sure if you have more of a specific question on that, but in general, we certainly focus on foster youth. In fact, one of the grants we have from the Office of Youth Development is centered around, system-involved youth. And so it's concentration around that population.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Judd, I see you asked in the chat about TART or Uber, and I'm guessing that was around the part presentation where I talked about transportation being one of the biggest needs that young people face. Target's at the table. They are working with us. I will say that Goodwill is doing a lot of great work around transportation with their Cars to Work program in terms of helping youth find vehicles and transportation, getting them their license, and then also having a bike program as well, providing youth with bikes. So they're doing a lot of great work around transportation right now.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. I was also wondering about connections with our refugee or immigrant services. I would imagine a lot of our immigrant refugee young adults would fit in this category as well. Are there any connections or what's the connectionalism there with Kentucky Refugees, Catholic Charities?
Nikki, could you speak to some of those groups being at the table before, or have they simply been with us before?
Elizabeth, can I ask you to speak to that one? Because when you asked, I was trying to think of particular connections I've had. I have done that work more around Compassionate Louisville, so in a larger sense, and then I incorporate the many hats I wear within, back to CSYA. But Elizabeth, do you mind to answer that, please?
Right. I'm afraid the answer is going to be a little shorter than I'd like. The fact of the matter is, folks from both of those agencies that you mentioned, Judd, have been, part of CSYA in the past. But I think we really could do more for young people who are facing those challenges, who are coming to Louisville as a refugee, or maybe are still learning English. I know that their sense of isolation, certainly falls into the vulnerable but valuable category of folks, the population of folks that are so important to our community, but remain on the margins in so many instances for far too long. That's work that we'll continue to do and reach out to them and look for strategies to lift up strategies at the community level that really are unique for them. Super important.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Elizabeth. Are there other questions or comments that folks have for Darryl or other folks here?
I have a comment.
Please.
Thank you. First, let me introduce myself. My name is David Jair Simon. I'm a parish coordinator at Christ Church Cathedral on 2nd Street. And I'm also an MDiv student at Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. So I'm a minister in that capacity as well. Hey, just a comment. I wanted to go back a little ways when we were talking, Darryl, when you were talking about having programs that are easy to find. I felt like that was so important because before I served in this capacity at Christ Church Cathedral, I used to be the outreach coordinator of the Chestnut Street Family YMCA on obviously on Chestnut Street in the West End. And so serving the youth that were in that particular community, I was always trying to find different organizations. And I'm not originally from Louisville. I'm from upstate New York. And so coming here and learning just about everything, like I came here right in the summer of 2019, so right before everything dropped, with COVID and just police brutality and everything. And so even just then trying to learn my ways around Louisville and learning about the segregation that's still apparent and everything like that. It was very difficult for me to find different programs to just different types that could be positive and uplifting for the youth I was serving in that particular community.
No, I really appreciate you, David, for sharing your experiences, and it kind of pains me a little bit, but I have to laugh to keep from crying because I've heard so many people speak to that experience of coming to Louisville, because Louisville gets so many transplants from all over the country, all over the world that get here, and I think you kind of looked up a similar experiences that it is hard to find things when you get here, and it is hard to kind of break into these networks. I've heard Louisville described as cliquish. In every sense of the word, whether that's socially, whether that is trying to network, so professionally, it can be a very cliquish place to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make any sense when we have so much good work going on, but we still haven't figured out a way to market it to the masses, right? One of the most common things I hear somebody say is, well, I want to start a nonprofit to do this. And usually when I hear that, I can think of about 10 organizations that are doing that very work that people are saying they want to start. But because we're so cliquish, because we're not working together, because we don't know what's already out here and we don't have that spirit of collaboration, we're seeing just this recreation after recreation of similar services. And that's why there's so much competition. Instead of somebody saying, hey,
Wow,
I want to work with young people and you work with young people, I don't have to have my name on it. Let's work together. Let's just go ahead and pool resources and work together. But because one, we're not working together, and two, we don't know that we're even out here existing, somebody started another youth organization, somebody started another mentoring program. We really got to figure out how do we consolidate and make sure that we're actually getting the population to serve with these resources.
I agree.
Darryl, I want to jump in on that one. That's in a lot of the work that we're doing and trying to support network and coalition building. I think we also need to push on our funders. A lot of that comes down to people are trying to get funding for things. And so I think we need to encourage our funders to give to collaborative work instead of to just one organization, but it always encourage collaboration, and especially social innovators. I mean, those are the ones that we're highlighting with the beloved community. There are a lot of folks that are, just out of their own passion and energy doing these really great kind of things in their homes or, with their churches, and they're not part of larger organizations. And they don't really want to be because they want to have control over what they're doing, but they have trouble getting funding as well because they feel like the large bureaucratic organizations are getting the funding. So I think we need to think about creative funding streams where large organizations can partner with social innovators or people that are doing that kind of stuff out of their own passion or out of their garage or whatever, however you want to say that. Let's continue that conversation, but also want to bring in and invite our funders to think about creative ways they can support both organizations and startups, social innovators as well.
I agree with that 100%, Judd. I was just saying on Twitter today that I think funders need to be involved in community organizing. They need to know the place of their funding. They need to have a relationship with the communities that they're pumping in dollars to, right? And even we talk about what are the needs outside of funding. Folks need technical assistance. They need technical support, right? I've been a part of grant cycles here in Louisville, And whether we got the dollars or not, we were awarded technical assistance, which is vital to go creating capacity within organizations. There are a lot of great organizations doing great work, but they don't know how to put up together a budget. They don't know how to apply for a grant. They're like you said, they're doing great work out of a garage, and that's serving 15 people. But if they actually knew how to scale it to serve 100, how powerful could they be? How do we start figuring those things out as well?
Good, thank you. We've got about 6 more minutes, so would love for some other folks. There's a lot of wisdom on this call. Anybody else want to jump in and just have a comment or a question, engage in the conversation?
Yeah, I would just like to thank Darryl for your presentation. I thought it was very, very well done and very informative for someone like me who's new to Louisville, particularly in the organization that I'm with. I've been there for 6 months now, and I'm still navigating and learning the ropes and learning about some of the organizations in Louisville and who they work with and who they serve. Your organization particularly is very important to me in terms of the demographic it serves and just watching what you do. And as you scaled through many of the general layouts of the organization, it was very telling that you guys are on the right track. So I haven't emailed in the chat to you directly, where I would like to catch up with you sometime in the coming weeks to just talk to you more about your organization. So thank you.
So thank you, Glenn, for that. And I was laughing as you were saying that, because literally you came up in conversations like I need to connect with Glenn. I really want to sit down and talk. So I'm glad that you are here today and we could see each other and actually make it happen. Because that happens a lot, Louisville. Somebody will say, I was just talking about you with somebody. That's happened to me 4 times this weekend. I'm like, I hope you were saying good things. So, but would love to have that conversation, get connected. I know you're doing some great work. And
Absolutely.
Glenn, do you mind just sharing for those that are on Facebook what organization you're with?
I'm with Sweet Evening Breeze. It's a LGBTQ organization exclusively serving 18 to 24-year-old homeless individuals in the Louisville downtown area. It's in its infant stages, but I suspect that we will be up and running sometime this summer with a drop-in center and doing some other services.
That's great. Thank you. We'd love to continue conversation with you with the beloved community as well, and find ways we can support you. Are there other folks on the call that want to jump in with a question or a comment?
Judd, I'll take just a moment to lift up housing and homelessness in our community. That is an area where, certainly I've spoken with Darryl and Elizabeth and probably anyone I know on this call about that need. What I saw most recently was around 90 young people under 24 in our community who are experiencing homelessness, who are on the streets in tents, couch surfing, and sleeping in cars with children. It's a serious problem. And I feel like 90 young people is manageable for this community if we continue to work together and have discussions and collaborate. And so I'm glad to see that some of those things are continuing to happen. But I do want to just take that moment to lift up homelessness in our community. If there's anything we all can continue to do to support those efforts, and can reach out to Darryl around connections with other organizations, I think that we would see a real impact in our community.
Can I just affirm that real quick, Nikki? Because one thing, I know I'm preaching to the choir with you and maybe a few other people on this call, but for anybody watching out there on the live stream, I think one thing that we take for granted in terms of homelessness is that homelessness is not just seeing somebody out on the street. And I know from my time working with JCPS and working with adjudicated youth, one of the biggest issues facing young people is transient housing, right? So I might not be out on the street per se, but I might spend one night at a best friend's house, and then the next night I'm at my aunt's house, and then on Wednesdays I'm at a shelter, and then Thursday I might have to figure it out. It might be on the street for a day, and that's hard to track. Just seeing somebody consistently in a shelter or in an encampment around the city, but that is one of the biggest problems facing Louisville young people right now is this idea of transient housing.
Any final thoughts or questions? Darryl, just a deep bow to you. We're so fortunate that you're in the place that you're at. So thank you for the wisdom and the energy and compassion that you hold. And the rest of you on this call as well. I know a lot of you have given your life and work to young people. And so on behalf of our community, deep bow to each of you for that work. It's so important and essential. And so thank you for doing it. And Darryl, thanks for the presentation today. I want to encourage folks to come back and join us again the next 2 weeks on Thursdays at 3 o'clock. We'll be having conversations with stakeholders and then also conversations with young adults that fit into the Opportunity Youth category, so you can hear their voices. And then on April 27th, it was our Reckoning Forum, and we'll be highlighting some social innovators that are doing really good work in this space and need our community support. Levon Clack, Demarion Fleming, Asa Coleman, and Stacy Bailey Najia will be presenting at our Reckoning Forum. So put that on your calendar, April 27th at 6 o'clock, and we'll be sending out more information. Nikki, you want to close this up?
Thank you, Jed. Thank you, everyone, for being here. A special thank you to Darryl. Elizabeth, thank you always for being the foundation for CSYA. We could not do this without you. So thank you so much. Thank you to the friends and partners. I see various domains here today that cover our journalism. Philanthropy is here, Orphan Care Alliance, just so many groups that do amazing work with our young people. And so I'm proud to stand with you all. I'm so happy you could join us today. It means a lot to have your support and for you to show up. And Darryl, to you, this community is behind you. We also have your back, us and the young people. And so we're here to uplift the work that you're doing and the things you're going to do for CSYA. We're so proud to have you today on this platform, and so proud to walk with you with this, doing this work. So thanks to everyone. Thank you, Jeff, for hosting, and we hope to see you again very soon.
Great. Thank you all. Peace.
We'll see you.
Thanks, Darryl.
Thank you.